All I have told is the truth, but not the whole truth. Laura Ingalls Wilder said this in 1937. To many Laura Ingalls Wilder readers, this quotation sounds like heresy. Could Laura Ingalls Wilder, the beloved author of the Little House series, really have said such a thing? Surely, her readers maintain, I've read this out of context. But no, the quote means exactly what it says. In her novels, Wilder didn't tell the whole truth. She delivered this line during the Detroit Book Fair in 1937, just as her fourth novel, On the Banks of Plum Creek, was published. Wilder was fast becoming a celebrity within the world of children's books, though she wasn't yet a legend. Perhaps this is why the line didn't get much attention back in 1937. But in this speech, Wilder maintained that the truth went beyond historical fact. And in a letter the following year to her daughter, author Rose Wilder Lane, about the next book in the Little House series, By the Shores of Silver Lake, Wilder confessed, I stretched a point when I had Laura go with Pa to see the work on the railroad. I never did. He would not have taken me. And in a later letter, she explained why she stretched this point. I did it to have Laura see it firsthand and get her reaction. In other words, Wilder altered the truth to create a better story, and she did it again and again in all her Little House books. Take Jack the Brindle Bulldog, for example. In Wilder's novels, he follows the family patiently in the big woods of Wisconsin to Indian Territory and on to Minnesota. Wilder describes his death in her fifth novel, By the Shores of Silver Lake. In the morning when Laura came down the ladder in the lamplight, Pa was going out to do the chores. He spoke to Jack, but Jack did not stir. Only Jack's body, stiff and cold, lay curled on the blanket. He would never again sniff the morning air and go springing over the short grass with his ears up and his mouth laughing. For those of us who love dogs, there's a deep and satisfying emotional truth in that scene. But it never happened. In Wilder's autobiography, Pioneer Girl, which will be published in 2014 for the first time, Wilder wrote that when the Ingalls family left Indian Territory in 1870, Pa traded his ponies Pet and Patty for a larger pair and threw in Jack as part of the deal, because Jack wanted to stay with Pet and Patty, as he always did. And what about Nellie Olson, the character so many Wilder fans love to hate? She was fiction too, a composite of three girls that Wilder knew during her adolescence: Nellie Owens, Genevieve Masters, and Stella Gilbert. As for the Ingalls family themselves, the image the books give us of a family always moving west, that's fiction too. While the fictional family moved from Wisconsin to Indian Territory to Minnesota and on to Dakota Territory, the real Ingalls family moved from Wisconsin to Missouri and Kansas, back to Wisconsin, on to Walnut Grove, Minnesota, Plum Creek in the books, east to Burr Oak, Iowa, back to Walnut Grove, and finally on to Dakota Territory. Why did Wilder so radically alter the truth of her family's history? Wilder believed that her story demanded a tighter focus, a more unified theme. Her family's real experiences in Burr Oak, Iowa, where among other things they ran a hotel, wouldn't work within the context of Wilder's fictional story about a western homesteading family, as she explained to Rose Wilder Lane. It is a story in itself, but it does not belong in the pictures I am making of the family. She also chose not to write about her brother Freddie in the Little House books. He died in August 1876 as the family moved to Burr Oak, Iowa. As Wilder wrote in Pioneer Girl, one awful day he straightened out his little body and was dead. as we will explore later in the course. The image that you see here of Wilder is the one that most people have of her. A sweet-looking, white-haired little old lady who took up writing in her 60s and was an instant success. Yet the real story about Wilder's novels and their success is far more complicated. Wilder's career as a professional writer actually began in 1911, when she was writing for the Missouri Ruralist. Her work there sharpened her writing and storytelling skills. She learned how to invent dialogue, build suspense, create memorable characters, develop an entertaining narrative around a central theme. Again, we'll discuss this more fully as the course unfolds. But as you can see, Wilder's work for the Ruralist helped sharpen her writing craft and prepared her for writing fiction. Furthermore, Wilder didn't simply write one perfect draft for each of the Little House books and then send it off to her publisher where it became an instant success. As we'll see, her road to publication was often bumpy, and as for the books themselves, Wilder worked hard at her craft, revising and rewriting and sometimes even struggling to find a plot for one novel after another. As she wrote to her daughter Rose, "The only way I can write is to wander along with the story, then rewrite and rearrange and change it everywhere." This brings me to another point about Wilder, which we'll examine in more detail throughout this course, and it's an issue that strikes at the very heart of Wilder's literary legacy. Who wrote the Little House books? Was it Wilder, or did her daughter, Rose Wilder Lane, a best-selling author herself in the 1920s, actually write these books? Surely, Rose Wilder Lane had more talent and experience with the publishing world than her mother. These are compelling questions. They merit close examination. But for now, I'll merely say that publishing almost any book is a collaborative process between a writer and an editor, another subject we'll discuss later on. And I'll also share this one example from Wilder's rough draft version of Pioneer Girl. What you're seeing here is a page from Pioneer Girl as it appears on microfilm. This is what I worked with when I researched and wrote Laura Ingalls Wilder, A Writer's Life. This is Wilder's handwriting. She wrote on Big Chief and 50/50 tablets in pencil. And here's what this passage says, which I think lays to rest the question of Wilder's raw talent as a writer. The sun sank lower and lower until, looking like a ball of pulsing liquid light, it sank gloriously in clouds of crimson and silver. Cold purple shadows rose in the east, crept slowly around the horizon, then gathered above in depth on depth of darkness from which the stars swung low and bright. This is rough draft, authentic Wilder. Examining the facts about Laura Ingalls Wilder's life and her literary career may overturn a few assumptions you've held about her work and her family. What's real in Wilder and what's not. Yet I personally believe that an examination like this won't diminish her reputation, it will strengthen it. Wilder was first and foremost a storyteller who believed that in fiction, a good story goes beyond the facts to create a larger and more satisfying truth. She was a writer and an artist who struggled to find her voice, her audience, and her place in the literary landscape of the 1930s and beyond. I'm looking forward to examining her life and work with all of you this semester.